Imagine a sport defined not just by the crack of the bat or the roar of the crowd, but by records numbers carved into the wood grain of baseball's history. Numbers that whisper of impossible summers and human endurance stretched to the breaking point. Records are more than statistics. They are promises of greatness. Ghost stories rattled in dugouts, the myths that turn ordinary athletes into living legends. But here's the truth. The records we talk about today aren't dusty black and white. Relics from the era of Babe Ruth, Ted Williams, or Nolan Ryan. They're happening right now. In real time. The active players you can still watch tonight on your television. The men who lace up their cleats and step onto fields across America are not just chasing the ghosts of baseball past. They are setting new milestones that will one day become those very same ghosts. Some of these names you know well household superstars with endorsement deals and MVP trophies. But others you may not realize are quietly cementing themselves into the foundations of the game. And perhaps the most astonishing thing of all is that some of these achievements are happening under impossible circumstances, shortened seasons, career-derailing injuries, new training regimens, and a game that itself has shifted dramatically in philosophy and pace. To watch baseball in 2025 is to watch a battlefield of contradictions, hitters redefining what it means to balance contact and power, pitchers reinventing themselves in the age of launch angles, at pitch clocks, and hybrids like Shohei Ohtani, rewriting the rulebook of what one human body should even be capable of. Which brings us to the very first, and maybe most awe-inspiring name on our list, Mike Trout. Mike Trout is, for lack of a better phrase, baseball's paradox on paper. He has lost years of his prime. Injuries have robbed him of entire stretches, of seasons. He has played more than 140 games in only one of the last 5 years. And yet, somehow, he is still the active leader in career WAR wins above replacement, a statistic that attempts to measure exactly how valuable a player is compared to a replacement-level body filling his roster spot. Trout's WAR sits at an outrageous 85.8, a number that instantly places him among baseball's immortals. To give you perspective, in his 15-year career, he has averaged 9 WAR per every 160 games played. Think about that. When he is healthy, he essentially gives his team nearly an entire all-star season of advantage just by existing. That's not dominance. That's distortion, bending the league's fabric around his presence. But numbers can feel sterile unless we weigh them against context. Trout didn't compile his WAR through empty stats padding. He led the entire league in WAR 5 straight seasons, from 2012 to 2016, the kind of run that recalls only the very best in history. He boasts a career slash line of .297, .408, 579, and an OPS plus of 172, which means he has been 72% better than the average hitter across his career. That's Ruthie and company. Add to it 378 home runs, 213 stolen bases, and defensive excellence in center field. And you realize why, even with the shadow of injury, Trout's career is undeniable. He's already a 3-time AL MVP, an 11-time All-Star, and has 9 Silver Slugger awards. He is, in every sense, a no-doubt Hall of Famer. Now here's where my commentary steps in. Trout's dominance is not just statistical, it's philosophical. He arrived in the era where baseball was wrestling with its own identity. The shift was outlawed, launch angle became religion, velocity skyrocketed, and analytics started dictating lineup cards. Trout didn't conform to one side or the other, he transcended it. He hit for power without selling out his average. He stole bases when it mattered, but didn't chase empty steals. He played defense with a kind of joy that made highlight reels pop night after night. The tragedy and perhaps the strange poetry of Trout's career is that it has often unfolded in relative obscurity. Unlike Derek Jeter under the lights of New York, Trout has spent his entire career in Anaheim, on teams that have rarely sniffed October glory. His records have been built not in the postseason spotlight, but in the grind of regular seasons, often ending in September silence. It forces us to ask, is greatness diminished if it isn't crowned with championships? Or does Trout's WAR itself proved that one man can only bend fate so far before the weight of team failures drags even a god back down to earth. What fascinates me most is how Trout forces us to rethink longevity. Baseball history is filled with players who shined brilliantly for short bursts before fading, but Trout's short bursts are 10-year stretches of unmatched excellence, interrupted by health setbacks yet still towering above his peers. When healthy, he is a force of nature. Injured, he still looms as a ghost over the game, his absence felt as heavily as his presence. And that paradox being both there and not there makes him not just one of the best active players, but one of the most intriguing figures in modern sports. So when we say Mike Trout holds the active record for career WAR, we're not just reciting a number, we're pointing to a living case study in how baseball measures greatness, how it struggles with the role of luck, health, and team dynamics, and how one player can embody both dominance and fragility at the same time. If Mike Trout is baseball's paradox, then Aaron Judge is its thunderclap the sudden, deafening sound that makes everyone look up. Judge's story is one of inevitability and astonishment colliding. At 6 even inches, 280 pounds, he is a physical outlier, the kind of player you'd expect to dominate a football field, not a baseball diamond. And yet, in 2022, Aaron Judge didn't just dominate, he rewrote history. He hit 60 home runs, the most ever by an American League player in a single season, surpassing Roger Maris's 61, which has stood since 1961. Think about the context of that number. The 1990s and early 2000s were stained by the steroid era, where sluggers like Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, and Barry Bonds demolished records, but left behind a cloud of suspicion. Judge's 60 felt different. It was clean. It was monumental, and it was happening under the brightest possible lights New York City dot in that 2020 season. Judge averaged a home run every 9.1 at-bats, but it wasn't just about the homers. He led MLB in WAR at 10.8, drove in 131 runs, and posted an unfathomable OPS plus of 210. To put that in perspective, Judge was 110% better than the average major league hitter that season. That's dominance on a scale reserved for the game's mythological figures. And what makes it even more breathtaking is that Judge repeated it. In 2024, he once again posted a 10.8 WAR, proving that his 2022 wasn't a comet flashing once in the sky, but the foundation of a career that could rival anyone in the modern game. But let's step back for a moment. Why does Judge's accomplishment feel so monumental beyond the numbers? It's because baseball has always had its titans, the men whose sheer physical presence seemed to warp the game around them. Babe Ruth did it in the 1920s when he turned a sport defined by bunts and steals into one ruled by power. Judge is his spiritual successor, the Ruth of our era. He isn't just a hitter, he's a spectacle. Every swing carries a sense of potential history. Every at-bat becomes an event. Fans stand, cameras lock, opposing pitchers sweat. That's cultural gravity, not just athletic excellence. And yet, Judge's greatness carries a weight of expectation that Trout never had to shoulder. Playing in New York means every triumph is magnified, and every slump is dissected under a microscope. In 2022, as Judge marched toward 62, stadiums packed not just with Yankee fans, but with traveling baseball pilgrims who wanted to witness history each time he came to the plate. There was an audible hush, the anticipation of something magical, or perhaps impossible, where the record-breaking ball finally soared into the Texas night. It wasn't just another stat. It was a moment that reconnected fans to the purity of baseball's narrative, the chase, the pressure, the hero finally breaking through. But here's where my commentary diverges from the numbers. Judge's 60 home runs aren't just about muscle. They're about timing, patience, and resilience. In an era when pitchers throw harder than ever, when breaking balls defy physics with spin rates unthinkable to decades ago, hitting 62 is not the same as it was in Maris's day. The game has evolved to make home runs rarer, not easier. Judge's ability to adapt working counts, punishing mistakes, staying disciplined is as impressive as the raw power itself. It's why his OPS plus in 2022 and 2024 wasn't just good, it was astronomical. He wasn't feasting on bad pitching. He was excelling against the very best arms in the world. Now, in 2025, Judge is again off to a blistering start, leading baseball in nearly every offensive category with a .410 batting average, 14 home runs, and an OPS plus of 254. These aren't just hot streak numbers. These are numbers that scream of a player who may not only be the face of the Yankees, but of baseball itself. The question is not whether Judge will make the Hall of Fame. He is already carving that path. It is whether he can sustain this mythical level of production into his mid-30s, or whether his giant frame, like so many sluggers before him, will eventually wear down. For now, though, we are witnessing the peak of a player who may redefine what an active career record looks like. In the power era, what fascinates me most is how Judge bridges two eras. On one hand, he is the embodiment of the old-school slugger, towering, intimidating, the guy pitchers fear. On the other hand, his patience at the plate, his eye for drawing walks, his understanding of launch angles and pitch selection, all root him in the modern analytical era. He is both Ruth and Moneyball, the myth and the math fused into one player. That duality is why his records matter not just as statistics, but as cultural touchstones. And here's a critical insight. Judge's achievements remind us that records are not just personal milestones, they are shared experiences. Trout's WAR is respected, even awe-inspiring, but it's hard to feel a WAR number. Judge's 60 to home runs, on the other hand, were felt. They were lived in real time. Fans can remember where they were when Judge hit number 62. They can recall the tension in every pitch of that chase. His record belongs not just to him, but to everyone who witnessed it. That is the difference between statistical immortality and cultural immortality. If Aaron Judge is the thunderclap that shakes the stadium, then Giancarlo Stanton is the earthquake that leaves cracks in the walls long after the noise fades. Stanton, the active leader in career home runs with 429, has lived his baseball life in extremes. He is both the embodiment of raw power and a reminder of how fragile that power can be when tethered to the human body. His career tells us something deeper about what it means to be a slugger in the modern age. That greatness can come with both thunder and silence, with highlight reels and with long stretches of absence. From the moment Stanton burst onto the scene, he seemed destined to hit baseballs into orbit. His swing is not just violent, it's cinematic. There's a unique sound his bat makes, a crack that feels less like wood meeting leather and more like a gunshot echoing through the park. For pitchers, facing Stanton at full health is a nightmare. He averages 40 to home runs per 160 to games, with a career slugging percentage of .505 and an OPS plus of 136 in his best season. 2017, Stanton launched 59 home runs, led the league in WAR at 8.1, and collected an MVP trophy. That season wasn't just dominance. It was a statement that Stanton was the most dangerous hitter alive. But Stanton's story is not linear. Injuries have stalked him like shadows, stealing hundreds of games and preventing him from consistently showcasing his otherworldly power. And yet, even with those setbacks, he has accumulated more home runs than any active player. That paradox speaks volumes. If injuries had not interrupted his trajectory, Stanton might very well be approaching the rarefied era of 600 or even 700 career home runs by now. Instead, he sits at 429, a number that is both staggering and tantalizingly incomplete. What fascinates me about Stanton is how he represents the double-edged sword of modern conditioning. Players today train like never before. They are bigger, stronger, faster, optimized for maximum performance. Stanton is the prototype of this generation, muscle-packed, explosive, built like a gladiator. But that very construction might also be his curse. His muscles strain, his joints falter, his frame struggles to carry the very power that makes him extraordinary. In that sense, Stanton is a reminder that baseball is still played by flesh and bone. No matter how superhuman someone might appear, Yet despite these struggles, Stanton has continued to deliver. In 2024, a season many thought might be the beginning of his fade, he added 27 more home runs to his total, even diminished, even battling his body. Stanton remains one of the game's premier power threats. That resilience deserves respect. Too often, fans dismiss sluggers who battle injuries as disappointments. But consider this. How many players, healthy for their entire careers, never touch for 100 home runs? How many never sniff an MVP? Stanton has done both, while carrying the weight of expectation, the glare of media scrutiny, and the literal physical pain of being built like a superhero in a mortal league. And here's where the commentary digs deeper. Stanton's career challenges the way we evaluate power hitters. In baseball culture, we tend to romanticize the Ironman, the Cal Ripkens, the players who show up every day, every season. While Stanton teaches us another lesson, that greatness can be fragmented and still meaningful. A home run hit by Stanton doesn't just go into the record books, it goes into highlight reels for a decade, replayed as an example of what sheer power looks like. He doesn't just hit home runs, he destroys baseballs, sending them distances few others can match. That aesthetic dominance, that sense of awe, is its own form of greatness. His 2017 MVP season illustrates this perfectly. That year, Stanton wasn't just good, he was the definition of intimidation. Opposing pitchers had to adjust entire game plans around him. His presence altered the very ecosystem of baseball strategy. That is what true dominance looks like, not just putting up numbers, but forcing everyone else to bend around you. And yet, Stanton's story is also cautionary. He reminds us that power comes at a price. For every home run he has hit, there are countless at-bats missed due to injuries, countless headlines questioning his durability, countless whispers of what might have been. But perhaps that is what makes him compelling. If Judge represents inevitability, Stanton represents fragility. He is proof that baseball records are not just about accumulation, they are about survival. In the end, Stanton's 429 home runs stand as a monument to perseverance as much as to talent. He has endured, he has adapted, and he has continued to produce even when his body has betrayed him. That is a different kind of greatness, one that deserves to be celebrated alongside the Ironman. Because sometimes the story of baseball isn't about the player who plays every day, it's about the player who refuses to disappear. If Giancarlo Stanton is the earthquake that rattles stadium rafters with power, then José Altuve is the heartbeat that keeps the game alive in its quietest, most fundamental rhythm. Baseball, for all its obsession with the long ball, has always been built on the simplest transaction: bat meeting ball, ball finding grass, runner reaching base. In the age of towering sluggers, shifting defenses, and launch angles designed to scrape the heavens, Altuve has been the stubborn reminder that precision can be as deadly as brute force. His 2014 season remains the crown jewel of that truth. 225 hits in 158 games, the most by any player since Ichiro Suzuki's heyday, and the active single-season hits record. To put that into perspective, Altuve averaged 1 point for the hits per game across that season, finishing with a .3 for 1 batting average and an OPS plus of 135. But stats alone miss the spirit of what he accomplished. Watch the tape from that year, and you'll see something elemental: line drives punched between infielders, bloopers dropping softly into no man's land, sharp grounders finding daylight through perfectly timed swings, while power hitters were aiming to leave the yard. Altuve was proving that death by 1,000 cuts could still be lethal in modern baseball. And he didn't just rack up hits, he terrorized pitchers with speed too, stealing 56 bases that same year, the most in the American League. He wasn't just hitting, he was reshaping games with relentless consistency. Altuve's story adds layers that make his record more compelling. At 5'6", he is physically the antithesis of the modern baseball prototype. In a sport that increasingly worships size, strength, and exit velocity, Altuve has carved his legend by embracing exactly what the game underestimated. He doesn't intimidate pitchers by looming over the plate, he frustrates them by being untouchable. by fouling off pitches others would whiff on, by turning mistakes into line drives, and by sneaking into scoring position before anyone realizes what just happened. His record season in 2014 wasn't just about skill. It was about defying assumptions. But here's where commentary adds weight. Altuve's 125 hits came during a transitional era for baseball. By 2014, the analytics revolution was already in full swing. Teams were valuing on-base percentage and slugging over batting average. The strikeout was no longer stigmatized the way it had been in the past. In that environment, contact hitters like Altuve weren't just undervalued, they were almost considered anachronisms. And yet, Altuve stood as living proof that contact hitting was not dead. In fact, his season suggested that in a game flooded with velocity and defensive shifts, putting the ball in play could be a weapon all its own. Of course, Altuve's legacy has become more complicated. His involvement in the Houston Astros side-stealing scandal has forever divided fans on how to judge his career. For some, every hit and every accolade comes with an asterisk. For others, his consistency before and after the scandal proves his greatness was never artificial. And maybe that's where his story takes on a deeper resonance. Baseball itself has always lived in the gray area between myth and controversy, between purity and scandal. Altuve is both hero and lightning rod, which makes his 225-hit season not just a record, but a symbol of how baseball grapples with legacy. What I find most fascinating, though, is how Altuve embodies the balance of styles within baseball's broader ecosystem. For every stand or judge redefining what power looks like, there must be an Altuve reminding us that baseball isn't won by home runs alone. Contact hitters create chaos. They put pressure on defenses. They extend innings. They give sluggers the chance to come up with runners on base. In that sense, Altuve's 2014 season was a rebuttal to the notion that the home run is king. He didn't need to clear fences to dominate. He simply needed to be there every night, wearing pitchers down with relentless precision. Consider also how rare Altuve's accomplishment is in the modern game. In an era where pitchers throw harder than ever, where defensive alignments are optimized by computers, and where hitters are incentivized to swing for the fences, collecting 225 hits in a single season borders on the impossible. That's why no one else besides Ichiro has done it in decades. It requires not just skill, but discipline, health, and a relentless consistency that few can sustain. That's why Altuve's name deserves to stand alongside legends of the craft, even if his reputation elsewhere has been tarnished. And there's something almost poetic about Altuve's stature in relation to his accomplishment. At 5'6", he is living proof that baseball remains a sport where size does not dictate destiny. His 225-hit season was a triumph of fundamentals, timing, and pure determination. It reminds us that for all the data and analytics, the essence of the game is still about making contact, finding green, and keeping the line moving. If José Altuve's 225-hit season was a masterclass in precision, Ronald Acuña Jr.'s 2023 campaign was a fireworks show in controlled chaos. Baseball has always cherished speed, but speed alone has rarely been enough to define greatness. Rickey Henderson remains the gold standard, a player whose legs alone turned him into a Hall of Famer. But in the last 2 decades, the game seemed to move away from base stealing. Analytics told teams it wasn't worth a risk. Outs were too precious, and caught stealing percentages too damaging. Then Ronald Acuña Jr. arrived, and with him, the whole idea of what speed could mean in a modern game shifted. In 2023, Acuña didn't just steal bases, he shattered assumptions. He swiped 73 bags in 87 attempts, an 83.9% success rate, making him not just daring but efficient. No one has stolen that many since Jose Reyes in 2007, but Acuña didn't stop at running. He also crushed 41 home runs in the same season, becoming the first man in Major League Baseball history to join the newly christened 40-70 club. It wasn't just unprecedented, it was unthinkable. To understand why this record matters, you have to remember the environment in which it happened. By 2023, baseball was grappling with pace of play reforms, bigger bases, and new pickoff rules, all changes that theoretically made stealing bases slightly easier. But those rule changes didn't hand out 73 steals. Plenty of other players had the same opportunity. What set Acuña apart was his blend of instincts, courage, and pure athletic ability. He didn't just run, he ran smart. He read pitchers, timed jumps, and weaponized his presence. When Acuña was on base, the entire defensive alignment tilted toward him. Pitchers shortened deliveries, catchers rushed throws, infielders cheated toward the bag. His very existence created chaos, and out of that chaos, the Braves thrived. And yet, what makes Acuña's season truly historic isn't the stolen bases alone, it's the fusion of speed and power. Baseball has had power-speed combos before. The 40-40 Club 40 home runs and 40 stolen bases was once seen as the pinnacle of balanced dominance. With names like Jose Canseco, Barry Bonds, Alex Rodriguez, and Alfonso Soriano carving their places in history, but 40-70, that felt like science fiction until Acuña made it reality. It wasn't just that he hit 41 homers and stole 73 bases. It was that he did it with a slash line of .337, .416, .596, an OPS plus of 168, an award that crowned him the undisputed NL MVP in that single season. Acuña wasn't just one of the best players. In baseball, he was redefining the boundaries of what one player could do. Here's where the commentary deepens. Acuña's record forces us to ask a bigger question. Why did baseball ever turn away from speed? For 2 decades, analytics essentially sidelined the stolen base. The argument was simple: home runs produce runs more efficiently than steals, and getting thrown out damages your team's chances of scoring. But Acuña revealed something those spreadsheets missed: the psychological impact of speed. When a player like him gets on base, the game changes. Pitchers lose focus, infielders shift their priorities, the rhythm of the contest itself bends. Baseball is as much about pressure as it is about probabilities, and Acuña proved that applying constant, unrelenting pressure on the basepaths can be just as devastating as waiting for the long ball. Of course, baseball is cruel, and in April 2024, Acuña tore his ACL, cutting short the momentum of his prime. Injuries have a way of reshaping careers, and as of mid-2025, he is still fighting his way back through rehabilitation. Some might see that as tragedy, the dimming of a flame just as it was blazing brightest. But I see it differently. Acuña has already done something no one else in baseball history has accomplished. Whether he returns to his full form or not, his 2023 season exists as proof that the game can still surprise us, still deliver records that feel like science fiction, until they are reality. What makes Acuña so fascinating is not just what he has done, but what he represents. He is a symbol of baseball's shifting identity. For decades, fans and analysts argued about whether the game was too slow, too static, too dependent on home runs. Acuña was the answer to those complaints. He played baseball like it was a sprint. Every pitch a new opportunity to change the narrative. He forced the game to feel alive, unpredictable, and electric again. Watching him was watching possibility incarnate. There is also something poetic about the way Acuña's record blends past and future. His speed evokes memories of Rickey Henderson, Vince Coleman, and Lou Brock. His power evokes Bonds, Sosa, and McGuire. But together, they create a player who doesn't fit neatly into the game's history books. He belongs to a new category altogether, one that may or may not ever be filled by another name. That's what makes his record so intoxicating. It feels like both an outlier and a blueprint, an impossible feat that could inspire the next generation of players to chase it. And perhaps that is the most important part of all. Acuña's 4.070 season wasn't just about numbers. It was about imagination. It expanded the boundaries of what we thought possible in baseball. For decades, fans thought they'd seen it all. Then Acuña came along and proved that the sport still has frontiers left to explore. If Ronald Acuña Jr. redefined speed as a weapon of chaos, Gerrit Cole embodies the opposite, control through destruction. Baseball has always had pitchers who dominate with strikeouts, but Cole's 2019 season was something different, something that felt more like a physics experiment than a sport. That year, he struck out 326 batters in just 212 innings. Do the math and it becomes absurd. 13.8 strikeouts per 9 innings. Nearly 40% of the batters he faced walked back to the dugout without ever putting the ball in play. His record isn't just an accumulation of strikeouts. It is a symbol of how pitching itself has evolved into a high-velocity, high-spin arms race. Cole's 2019 with the Houston Astros is remembered as one of the most dominant pitching seasons of the modern era. He finished with a 20-5 record, a 2.50 ERA, and numbers that seemed almost video game-like. The image of Cole mowing down hitters night after night captured not just his own excellence, but the broader shift in baseball towards strikeouts as the defining currency of pitching success. For decades, pitchers were judged by wins, by eras, by durability. Cole's record, however, crystallized what the modern fan already knew. Nothing is more demoralizing for an offense than being struck out. But let's peel back the layers. Why did Cole's dominance resonate so strongly? Because it wasn't simply about throwing hard. Many pitchers can hit triple digits. Cole's genius was in how he married velocity with precision and spin. His fastball was not just fast, it carried what analysts call rising action, an optical illusion created by a spin rate that makes the ball appear to defy gravity. His slider bit late and sharp. His changeup darted just enough to keep hitters off balance. Facing Cole in 2019 wasn't just about reacting to velocity, it was about surviving deception. He turned at-bats into psychological battles where hitters second-guessed every swing, and most of the time, they guessed wrong. This dominance came at a time when baseball itself was changing. The three true outcomes, home runs, walks, and strikeouts, had become the dominant statistical reality of the game. Offenses were designed around hitting long balls, and pitchers were increasingly designed to stop them. Cole's 326 strikeouts represented not just his own greatness, but the sport's embrace of velocity, spin, and punch-outs as the foundation of success. In a way, Cole's record feels inevitable. Baseball's evolutionary path was always leading here, to a world where hitters swing big and miss big, and where pitchers like Cole thrive. And yet, Cole's brilliance forces us to grapple with an uncomfortable truth. Is baseball better when strikeouts dominate? Purists argue that too many strikeouts slow the game, make it feel repetitive, and remove the beauty of balls in play. But on the other hand, there's something viscerally exciting about a pitcher who can make the best hitters in the world look helpless. Cole's 2019 record stands as both a triumph and a question mark. It showed us how far pitching could go, but it also made us wonder about what might be lost along the way. What makes Cole especially compelling is that his dominance didn't fade after 2019. He has remained one of the premier pitchers in the game, collecting 6 All-Star selections, a Cy Young Award in 2023, and establishing himself as the ace of a Yankees staff built for October. His consistency underscores that his 326 strikeouts weren't a fluke. They were the peak of a sustainable, generational talent. And unlike some pitchers who burn bright and fade, Cole has shown the adaptability to keep succeeding even as hitters adjust. Here's the deeper commentary Cole's strikeout record illustrates how baseball rewards obsession. Pitching is not just about throwing hard, it's about endless hours of fine-tuning grips, studying spin rates, analyzing video, and chasing perfection. Cole is famous for his meticulousness. His preparation is as much a weapon as his fastball. That attention to detail makes his 2019 record not just a reflection of athletic talent, but of intellectual dedication. He is a reminder that in baseball, the mind and body must work in tandem, and when they do, records fall. Cole's record also raises a historical question. Where do we place him among the great strikeout artists of the past? Randy Johnson, Nolan Ryan, Pedro Martinez? Those pitchers dominated in eras when hitters made more contact, when velocity wasn't as common. When strikeouts were rarer, does that make their totals more impressive? Perhaps, but it also underscores why Cole's record matters. Even in an age where strikeouts are common, his dominance still stood out. He didn't just thrive in the environment, he redefined it. And maybe that's the heart of Cole's story. He is not simply a great pitcher. He is a product and symbol of his era. His record tells us what baseball has become: faster, sharper, more specialized, and more ruthless. In Cole's 2019 season, we glimpse both the peak of individual brilliance and the broader forces shaping the game. His 326 strikeouts are not just his, they belong to the age of velocity. If Gerrit Cole's 326 strikeouts in 2019 distilled pitching into its most ruthless essence, then Shohei Ohtani's 2024 season exploded baseball into something entirely new. We've had sluggers, we've had speedsters, we've had pitchers who seemed untouchable, but never in the modern game have we seen one player embody all of it until Ohtani. His 2024 campaign with the Dodgers wasn't just a great season. It was a rupture in the boundaries of imagination. He became the first player in Major League Baseball history to join the 50-50 club, 50 for home runs, and 59 stolen bases in a single year. Pause on that for a moment. Baseball has had centuries to produce such a feat, and it never happened until Ohtani. What judges to raw power and what Acuga is to explosive speed, Ohtani somehow contains both. And then, as if that weren't unfair enough, he also has the ability when healthy to step on the mound and dominate as a pitcher. His 2024 was the stuff of comic books, yet it unfolded in real stadiums before millions of eyes. Statistically, it is staggering: a .310 batting average, .390 on-base percentage, 646 slugging percentage, and a 189 ops plus. He produced 9 points to WAR as a hitter alone. He led the National League in nearly every offensive category. But numbers alone flatten what Ohtani did, because his season wasn't just about producing runs. It was about producing awe. Each game carried with it the possibility of witnessing something no one had ever seen before: a home run launched into the night, followed by a stolen base minutes later. He was a highlight reel in motion every night. The 50-50 season also forces us to revisit baseball's history. There have been legends of power-speed balance. Barry Bonds in his early years before power consumed his approach. Alex Rodriguez, who once combined 40 homers with 40 steals. Jose Canseco, Alfonso Soriano, players who flirted with balance but always leaned heavier on one side. Ohtani transcended that. He didn't flirt with balance. He dominated both sides of the equation. In doing so, he didn't just create a new club, he founded it. There's only one name in the 50-50 ledger, and it's his. But here's where commentary makes the record even richer. Ohtani is not just breaking baseball's statistical conventions. He is breaking its cultural imagination. For decades, the game trained us to think specialization was the only way forward. A player had to pick a lane: pitcher or hitter, power or speed. Ohtani obliterated that binary. He proved that not only could you attempt both, you could excel at both at levels no one thought humanly possible. In a sense, Ohtani doesn't just belong to baseball. He belongs to myth. He's a modern Hercules, rewriting rules that fans and analysts alike assumed were immutable. And yet, his story also has a layer of fragility that makes it deeply human. Injuries have haunted him, cutting short stretches of brilliance on the mound, leaving fans to wonder what his true peak might have been had he been healthy across every season. That tension between the godlike talent and the mortal vulnerability makes him even more captivating, because Ohtani isn't a superhero in the abstract. He's a superhero we worry about. We hold our breath every time he dives into a base, every time he grimaces on the mound. His greatness feels both infinite and fragile, and that contradiction only deepens the awe. What I find most profound is what Ohtani represents for the future of baseball. His records are not just numbers to be etched into history, they are invitations. Young players watching him now won't see specialization as destiny, they'll see possibility. Ohtani has already inspired a new generation of prospects who want to pitch and hit, who want to break the molds that baseball has relied on for a century. His 50-50 season isn't just about 2024. It's about 2034, 2044, when the seeds he planted may bloom into a generation of players who see no limits. Of course, there's a larger cultural truth at play here. Ohtani's dominance has made him a global phenomenon, transcending the sport itself. He is one of the few athletes alive whose name carries the weight of destiny, like Messi in soccer, LeBron in basketball, or Serena in tennis. His 50-50 record wasn't just discussed in baseball circles. It was global news. He's not just an MLB player, he's an ambassador of what human potential looks like when unleashed. And maybe that's the key takeaway. Ohtani's 50-50 isn't about comparison. It's not about measuring him against Judge's home runs or Acuña's steals or Trout's WAR. It's about the fact that he exists in a category of his own. He doesn't just hold a record. He holds the imagination of the sport, and in baseball, that might be the rarest record of all. If Shohei Ohtani's 50-50 season in 2024 expanded baseball into the realm of myth, Jacob deGrom's 2018 season compressed it into surgical precision. Where Ohtani overwhelmed with abundance of power, of speed, a possibility that deGrom dominated through scarcity, his 1.70 era in 2018 wasn't just stingy. It was a masterclass in denying baseball itself, in turning every opposing lineup into frustrated scribbles of missed opportunities. It was the kind of season that forces us to rethink not only pitching, but the very idea of excellence in a sport where failure is supposed to be the norm. Let's ground the numbers. deGrom pitched 117 innings that year for the New York Mets. He allowed just 41 earned runs all season. His ERA plus, which adjusts performance for league and ballpark, was 116, meaning he was 116% better than the average pitcher. Opponents hit just .196 against him, and yet, here's the cruel irony, deGrom finished with only a 10-9 record. Why? Because the Mets, perpetually undermining greatness with mediocrity, failed to give him run support. That juxtaposition, pitching perfection and team futility, turned his season into one of the strangest paradoxes in modern baseball. He was historically dominant, but the win column didn't show it. That paradox, however, makes the season even more powerful. Wins have long been the lazy shorthand for judging pitchers. deGrom's 2018 dismantled that illusion. You couldn't look at his record and see the truth. You had to dig deeper, had to look at ERA, strikeouts, hits allowed, WHIP, and the fact that no matter how poorly the Mets hit, deGrom kept them alive every fifth day. His season wasn't just about numbers. It was about forcing fans and analysts alike to acknowledge that greatness could exist independent of team results. In some ways, he liberated the way we talk about pitching, and the brilliance wasn't fleeting. deGrom followed his 2018 masterpiece with another Cy Young Award in 2019, proving that his dominance wasn't a fluke. In 2021, before injuries derailed him, he posted an ERA of 1.08 over the first half of the season, numbers that looked more like video game sliders than real life. For stretches of his career, deGrom wasn't just the best pitcher in baseball. He was the most unhittable human alive. His fastball routinely touched 100 miles per hour. His slider bit like glass. His command was surgical. Watching him pitch felt unfair, as if hitters were being asked to solve an impossible riddle while blindfolded. But here's where the commentary becomes bittersweet. deGrom's legacy is a study in fragility. Injuries have stalked him relentlessly: elbow issues, shoulder strains, and finally, Tommy John surgery in 2024. For every moment of brilliance, there is an equal shadow of absence, and that is perhaps what makes him so compelling. Greatness is always fragile, but in deGrom's case, it feels particularly delicate. He is not Nolan Ryan racking up strikeouts for decades, or Justin Verlander outlasting Father Time with consistency. He is more like Sandy Koufax, a blinding comet, burning at impossible brightness for a brief window before the body gave way. That comparison to Koufax is apt. Koufax retired at 30 with arthritic pain, yet his brief peak is still remembered as one of the greatest in history. DeGrom may find himself in the same category, fewer total innings than his peers, fewer career wins, but a peak so impossibly dominant that the numbers remain untouchable. His 2018 era isn't just an active record, it's a testament to how pitching, when perfected, can feel almost inhuman. But let's go even deeper. DeGrom's career forces us to reflect on how we value greatness. Do we judge by totals, by longevity, accumulation, the sheer counting of stats? Or do we judge by peaks, by the height of dominance, even if it lasts only a few seasons? Baseball has always wrestled with this question. Some players are remembered for their consistency, others for their brilliance in bursts. DeGrom's 2018 season is an argument for the latter, that sometimes a few years of impossible excellence can outweigh decades of mere competence. There's also a cultural angle here. DeGrom pitched his masterpiece seasons for the Mets, a franchise known as much for heartbreak as for triumph. His dominance shone brighter against the backdrop of dysfunction. In a way, that contrast amplified his greatness. He wasn't buoyed by dynastic teams like the Yankees of the late 1990s or the Astros of the 2010s. He was carrying a franchise, dragging it into relevance through sheer willpower every time he took the mound. That burden makes his record feel not just statistical, but heroic. And now, with the Texas Rangers, he fights to return from surgery, the question looming, will we ever see that brilliance again? Maybe not. Maybe his 2018 season was the pinnacle, the summit from which all else descends. But even if that's true, it is enough, because baseball history isn't always written by accumulators. Sometimes it is written by comets. And Jacob deGrom's 2018 was the brightest comet we've seen in a generation. If Jacob deGrom's career reminds us of brilliance compressed into fragility, then Justin Verlander is the counterpoint. Longevity as a masterpiece, endurance as an art form. Baseball is not a kind game to pitchers. Arms burn out, velocity fades, bodies betray, and yet here stands Verlander, 20 years into his career, still piling up strikeouts, still collecting wins, still carrying himself with the aura of inevitability every time he steps on the mound. Among active players, he holds two of the most coveted career marks, 3,456 strikeout strength all-time in baseball history, and 262 wins, nearly 50 more than his next closest peer, Max Scherzer. Verlander's numbers alone would make him legendary, averaging 120 strikeouts per season across the decades, leading the league in strikeouts 5 different times, winning 3 Cy Young Awards, 9 All-Star selections, an American League MVP, and 2 World Series championships. His resume reads like a museum wall of pitching excellence, and yet the numbers only tell half the story. The real marvel of Verlander is not just what he has done, but how long he has done it. Consider this. Most pitchers, even the great ones, have arcs that look like fireworks, bright bursts, sharp declines. Verlander's career has been more like a marathon, punctuated by reinventions. In his early years with the Detroit Tigers, he was a power pitcher, overwhelming hitters with fastballs that brushed triple digits and breaking balls that snapped like tree branches. He threw a no-hitter in 2007, another in 2011, and by that same year, he was at the peak of the sport, winning both the Cy Young and the MVP. That dual recognition, the rarest of honors for a pitcher, cemented him as the face of dominance. And then, as the years wore on, Verlander did what so few can. He adapted. When velocity inevitably ebbed, he learned to manipulate movement. When hitters adjusted, he refined command. He rebuilt himself in Houston with the Astros, not only rediscovering velocity, but pairing it with spin rate optimization, turning his fastball into one of the most effective pitches of the StatCast era. That reinvention didn't just extend his career, it elevated it. He won 2 more Cy Young Awards after 35, an age when most pitchers are finished. He became an ace again on championship teams in pressure cooker Octobers. That adaptability is what makes Verlander's strikeout record so impressive. 3,456 Ks are not merely a byproduct of throwing hard. They are the accumulation of decades of evolution, of a mind and body working together to stay ahead of time itself. He has struck out generations of hitters literally. Think about it. His first strikeouts came against batters like Frank Thomas and Ken Griffey Jr., while his most recent ones came against players young enough to have grown up watching him on television. His career is a bridge across baseball history. Then there are the wins to 162 of them. In the modern era, pitcher wins have lost some of their luster. They're valued by analytics that point out how much they depend on run support and bullpen reliability. And yet, Verlander's total still resonates. Wins may be imperfect, but they symbolize longevity, consistency, and the ability to give your team a chance to succeed year after year. Verlander has had 12 seasons with 15 or more wins to 20-win campaigns and has led the league in wins 3 times. In an age when complete games are vanishing, when workloads are managed carefully, his total becomes even more extraordinary. Here's the deeper reflection. Verlander's career is not just about durability. It's about defying inevitability. Every pitcher eventually declines. That's the rule. But Verlander has written a different script, one in which age bends but does not break him. He tore his UCL, underwent Tommy John surgery at 37, and most thought that was the end. Instead, he returned at 39, won another Cy Young, and looked as dominant as ever. That's not normal. That's a willpower story, a reinvention story, a man refusing to yield to the calendar. Culturally, Verlander's longevity has made him something of a symbol. He isn't just a player. He's a reminder to fans that greatness can last longer than we expect, that brilliance doesn't always burn out. It can endure, adapt, and even grow sharper with time. In a sport where the seasons pile up like sediment, Verlander has kept carving his name deeper into the stone, refusing to be buried. But perhaps the most compelling part of his legacy is that he has been both a throwback and a modern marvel. He has the aura of an old-school workhorse, someone who wanted the ball deep into games, who thrived on the weight of innings, but he also embraced modern analytics, fine-tuned his mechanics, and used technology to stay ahead. He is a man of 2 eras, proving that greatness doesn't require choosing between the past and the future. So when we look at his 3,456 strikeouts and 260 wins, we're not just looking at milestones. We're looking at defiance. We're looking at a man who has faced everything time could throw at him: age, injury, doubt, and kept standing. And perhaps that's why, more than the numbers, Verlander feels immortal. His career is less about a single season of dominance and more about the relentless accumulation of moments, each one layered until they become a monument of resilience. If Justin Verlander is proof that greatness can endure across decades, then Luis Arraez is proof that greatness can be distilled into simplicity. In an age when hitters swing for the fences, when launch angles and exit velocity dominate the conversation, Arraez stands as a quiet rebellion. He does not overwhelm with power. He does not intimidate with size. Instead, he redefines dominance by doing the thing baseball was built upon better than almost anyone else: alive, putting the bat on the ball. His career batting average of .3 makes him the active leader, and his .35 for mark in 2023 with the Miami Marlins stands as one of the purest demonstrations of contact hitting in the modern game. At first glance, his numbers might not scream legend. He isn't hitting 40 home runs. He isn't driving in 120 runs. But that's the point. In a baseball ecosystem tilted toward extremes, massive home runs on one end, strikeouts on the other, Arraez thrives. In the middle ground, the space where precision, patience, and discipline rule, he doesn't just hit. He refuses not to. In his career, he has more walks than strikeouts, an anomaly in an era where even the best hitters often fan 150 times a season. Watching him bat feels like watching a craftsman at work, controlled, deliberate, almost surgical. His 2023 season deserves to be remembered alongside the gaudiest power records. He collected 103 hits in just 147 games, struck out only 34 times in 617 plate appearances, and posted an OPS plus of 128. But the stat that resonates most is the league-wide context. That year, the average major leaguer hit just .248, Arraez hit 354. He wasn't just better, he was playing a different game altogether. In a sense, he felt like a time traveler from another era, dropped into a league that had forgotten the art of contact. What makes Arraez fascinating is that his skill set doesn't feel accidental. It feels intentional, almost defiant. While other players chase velocity with violent swings, Arraez stays calm, adjusting mid-pitch, flicking balls into play with precision that borders on the uncanny. He embodies the principle that baseball doesn't always reward brute strength. Sometimes it rewards finesse, timing, and the kind of hand-eye coordination that can't be measured by radar guns. In this way, he is an echo of hitters like Tony Gwynn, Wade Boggs, or Rod Carew, who turned batting into an art form rather than a power contest. And here's where commentary deepens. Arraez forces us to confront how we value players. Modern front offices often prioritize on-base percentage and slugging over batting average. Analysts warn fans not to fall in love with batting titles the way past generations did, and yet, when Arraez steps into the box, none of that matters. You feel something primal, something older than sabermetrics, the satisfaction of seeing a hitter put the ball in play again and again, daring defenses to stop him. His value isn't just statistical, it's aesthetic. He makes baseball look beautiful again. That beauty is especially striking because it's rare. Only 3 active players have career averages above .300. Arraez isn't just leading a category, he's standing nearly alone in it. His approach is a reminder of what has been lost in the modern strikeout era. The joy of constant contact, the suspense of wondering where the ball will land rather than whether it will clear the fence. In that sense, his record is less about the numbers and more about philosophy. He is playing baseball one way while the rest of the league plays another, and his success proves that alternative paths still exist. But perhaps the most impressive part of Arraez's game is his discipline. Hitting over .300 in one season can be explained away as luck, a few bloops falling in, a hot streak sustained. But Arraez has done it year after year, proving it isn't luck. It's skill. It's repeatable. It's who he is. And in a sport where failure is constant, where the very best hitters succeed only 3 times out of 10, Arraez consistently pushes those odds upward. That is nothing short of remarkable. Culturally, Arraez represents something we crave in baseball, but rarely see anymore: balance. The game is tilted so heavily toward extremes that watching him can feel like a palate cleanser. He doesn't dominate highlight reels the way Judge or Ohtani do, but he offers something else: stability, reliability, a sense that every at-bat is an opportunity rather than a coin flip. In that way, he connects fans to the roots of the game, to its simplest joys, without sacrificing relevance in the modern era. So when we talk about Arraez as the active leader in career batting average and as the holder of the highest single-season average in years, we aren't just cataloging numbers. We're recognizing an artist at work in a factory of power hitters. We're acknowledging that in a sport obsessed with speed and strength, there's still room for precision, and maybe that's the greatest value of his records. They remind you is that baseball is not just about overwhelming opponents. Sometimes it's about outsmarting them, outlasting them, and simply refusing to give them an easy out. If Luis Arraez reminds us that simplicity still has a place in baseball, then Clayton Kershaw reminds us that excellence, when stretched across time, becomes legend. Every pitcher, no matter how great, is supposed to age. Velocity fades, command drifts, and eventually the weight of innings breaks down even the strongest arms. But for 17 seasons, Kershaw has bent that rule, carving out a career that has made him not just the active leader in era at .250, but one of the greatest pitchers the sport has ever seen. His record is not a single flash of brilliance. It is a monument to consistency. Think about what that number means. A .250 career era isn't just good, it's almost unfathomable in the modern era. Since the mound was lowered in 1969, few pitchers have sustained dominance for so long. Kershaw has 13 seasons with an ERA under 3.00. He has led all of baseball in ERA for times. His ERA plus a measure of how much better he has been than the league average is 156, meaning he has been 56% better than his peers over the course of his career. That isn't just dominance. It's domination repeated so many times that it became routine. Until fans began to take it for granted, Kershaw's peak was otherworldly. From 2011 to 2017, he was the best pitcher on the planet, stacking 3 Cy Young Awards, winning the 2014 National League MVP, and finishing in the top 5 of Cy Young voting nearly every year. He was a metronome of brilliance, mowing down hitters with a fastball-slider curveball combination that seemed almost unfair. His curve, in particular, became iconic, a slow, looping hammer that froze hitters and filled highlight reels. Watching Kershaw at his peak was watching pitching perfection, velocity, command, movement, and intelligence all fused into one left arm. But here's what makes his ERA record even more powerful. He wasn't just dominant in spurts. He was dominant across eras. Kershaw debuted in 2008, at a time when hitters were still adjusting to the post-steroid era. He thrived during the rise of the launch angle revolution. When homers began to soar again, he pitched through rule changes, shifts, and even the pitch clock era. Through all of it, he stayed elite. His .50 era is a number carved across changing landscapes, proving that his greatness wasn't a product of environment, it was a product of him. And yet, Kershaw's story isn't without struggle. For years, he carried the stigma of postseason disappointment. Dominant in the regular season, he seemed cursed in October, surrendering big hits in crucial moments that haunted highlight reels. Fans and critics alike began to question whether his brilliance was built for the playoffs. That narrative hung over him like a storm cloud until 2020, when he finally captured his first World Series title with the Dodgers. That championship didn't just silence critics, it reframed his career. He was no longer the tragic figure of wasted potential. He became the complete legend. His postseason struggles now just part of a larger arc of resilience. Here's where commentary cuts deeper. Kershaw's career-era record forces us to consider the value of longevity and adaptation. Unlike Degram, who burned bright before fading into injury, Kershaw adjusted. When his fastball lost velocity, he refined his command. When injuries threatened to end his career, he found ways to pitch smarter. Leaning on experience rather than sheer stuff, he didn't cling to what he used to be. He reinvented himself, and in doing so, sustained a level of excellence most pitchers can only dream of. That is what makes his .50 career era so remarkable. It's not the mark of a brief peak. It's the mark of a man who never allowed decline to consume him. Kershaw also represents something cultural for baseball. He has spent his entire career with the Los Angeles Dodgers, one of the game's most iconic franchises, and in doing so, he has become more than just a player. He is a face of the franchise, a constant presence through eras of change. When fans think of the Dodgers from 2008 to now, they think of Kershaw. That continuity adds weight to his legacy. He isn't just great. He is synonymous with greatness. In one uniform, one city, for nearly 2 decades. That kind of loyalty feels increasingly rare in modern sports, and it cements his place not just in baseball history, but in the cultural memory of Los Angeles. And perhaps the most beautiful part of Kershaw's story is its humanity. He is not remembered as flawless. He is remembered as brilliant but vulnerable, dominant but doubted, ultimately triumphant but tested. His era record doesn't erase his struggles. It contextualizes them, showing that even legends face moments of weakness, but that true greatness is measured over time, not in isolated failures. His .50 is a number that absorbs all of it, the peaks, the valleys, the reinventions, and still emerges as extraordinary. So when we talk about Clayton Kershaw as the active leader in era, we're not just citing a statistic. We're recognizing one of the greatest pitchers to ever live, a man who combined dominance with resilience, brilliance with longevity, and ultimately, greatness with humanity. His .50 era isn't just a record. It's a story of what happens when talent, work, and willpower intersect across 17 seasons and counting. If Clayton Kershaw represents excellence stretched across the mound for 17 seasons, then Freddie Freeman represents the mirror image on the hitter's side, a man who has turned consistency at the plate into a kind of quiet immortality. Baseball loves the spectacular, the towering home run, the jaw-dropping strikeout, but often the truest greatness lies in repetition, in the grind, in showing up every day and producing at the same elite level, year after year, until the sheer weight of it turns into history. That's Freeman. With 2,308 career hits, he is the active leader and in many ways, the embodiment of what it means to be both great and reliable in an era that rarely rewards both. Freeman's resume is staggering in its steadiness. He has averaged 181 hits per 160 games across his career. He owns a lifetime batting average of .301 and an OPS plus of 143, proving he isn't just a contact hitter, but one of the most complete offensive players of his generation. He has 8 All-Star selections, an MVP award in 2020, 3 Silver Sluggers, and 2 World Series championships, one with the Braves in 2021, and another with the Dodgers in 2024, where he was named World Series MVP. He has hit .300 or better in 8 different seasons, and even in his mid-30s, he's leading the National League in batting average, on-base percentage, slugging, and OPS plus. His career isn't slowing down, it's accelerating into legendary territory. But here's where Freeman's greatness becomes philosophical. Hits are not flashy. They don't carry the same mythic resonance as home runs or strikeouts. They are the quiet work of the game, and yet, over time, hits become the purest measure of consistency. You don't fluke your way into 2,300 of them. You don't luck into hitting .300 season after season. You achieve it through discipline, durability, and a refusal to yield to the grind of a 160-game schedule. Freeman has built his legacy not on fireworks but on reliability, and in a sport defined by failure, that reliability is a superpower. Think of it this way. Every era has its defining offensive archetypes. Babe Ruth was power incarnate. Ichiro Suzuki was the embodiment of contact. Barry Bonds was fear itself, walking more than he swung. Freeman is balance. He blends power and contact, patience and aggression, flair and steadiness. He doesn't chase headlines with gaudy single-season numbers. He simply shows up and adds to the pile, one hit at a time, until suddenly you look up and realize he is leading all active players. That is greatness hidden in plain sight. What fascinates me most about Freeman is the cultural weight of his career. For years, he was the heart of the Atlanta Braves, a symbol of loyalty and perseverance through both losing seasons and eventual triumph. His departure to the Dodgers in 2022 could have cast him as a villain in Atlanta lore. Instead, it only broadened his story. He won a title with the Braves, then proved he could be just as indispensable on a different team, in a different city, under brighter lights. His greatness is not tied to one uniform. It travels with him because it is who he is. And then there's the human side of his consistency. Fans often romanticize volatility players who burn bright, who deliver one unforgettable season. But Freeman shows us another truth. There's beauty in the steady hand. His career reminds us that not every record is built on singular, explosive moments. Some are built on accumulation, on refusing to take days off, on playing through pain, on caring about every at-bat, whether it's April in Miami or October in Los Angeles. That ethic resonates deeply because it mirrors life itself. Most of us don't live in fireworks. We live in consistency. We build our lives the way Freeman builds his hits, one day, one step, one repetition at a time. And here's the critical insight. Freeman's 2,308 hits may not hold the same headline value as Judge's 60 homers, or Acuña's 40 to 70 season, but in many ways, they may be harder to achieve. Power can fade in and out with streaks. Speed can disappear with one injury. But consistency requires something deeper and unshakable mentality, a durability of both body and mind, and an ability to adjust as pitchers, defenses, and eras change. Around you, Freeman has maintained all of that. His record isn't just about skill. It's about endurance of will. Culturally, Freeman feels like the kind of player who may be appreciated more in hindsight than in real time. Today, fans admire him. Tomorrow, when his career is done, historians may look back and see his numbers not as steady, but as staggering. That's the nature of consistency. It sneaks up on us, then overwhelms us all at once. So when we talk about Freddie Freeman as the active leader in career hits, we are not just counting knocks. We are acknowledging a career built on steadiness, loyalty, balance, and quiet greatness. His 2,308 hits are not fireworks. They are bricks in a cathedral of consistency, and when it is finished, it will stand as one of the defining monuments of his era. If Freddie Freeman's career hits represent the slow march of steady greatness, Aaron Judge's single-season WAR record represents the explosion of one man, bending the game around him. WAR wins above replacement is not a statistic you see on highlight reels. It doesn't produce viral clips or stadium ovations. It lives in spreadsheets and analytics departments, quietly trying to answer the most essential question in sports. How much is this player actually worth to his team? And in 2022, Aaron Judge answered that question with brute force, posting a 10.8 WAR season, the highest by any active player. 2 years later, in 2024, he did it again, proving it wasn't a lightning strike, but a sustainable storm. To understand why 10.8 WAR matters, you have to grasp what the stat represents. Replacement level means the kind of player you could pluck from the minor leagues, or waivers to fill a roster spot. WAR asks, how many wins does this star add compared to that replacement? A great season is 6 WAR. An MVP level season is 8 WAR. Judge hit 10.8 not once, but twice. That means in those seasons, he wasn't just better than average. He was essentially a full all-star stacked on top of another all-star. He wasn't just valuable. He was irreplaceable. In 2022, Judge's campaign was legendary. He hit .311 with 60 home runs, drove in 131 runs, and led MLB in nearly every offensive category: runs, RBIs, OBP, slugging, OPS, total bases. His OPS plus of 210 meant he was more than twice as good as the average hitter. It wasn't just one of the best seasons of the 21st century, it was one of the best seasons ever. And then, as if to silence anyone who thought it might be an outlier, Judge repeated the feat in 2024, again posting a 10.8 WAR, again dominating the league across every offensive metric. But WAR is not just about the counting stats. It folds in defense, base running, and context, and Judge excels there too. Despite his massive frame, he has been a capable right fielder, with an arm that freezes runners and instincts that turn potential doubles into outs. He isn't just a slugger who pads stats in meaningless moments. He changes the entire shape of games with his presence at the plate, on the bases, and in the field. That holistic impact is why his WAR reaches heights most players can't dream of. Here's where the commentary sharpens. Judge's WAR seasons represent the intersection of spectacle and substance. It's one thing to hit home runs and thrill fans. It's another to have every analytic, every calculation, every advanced metric confirm that you are bending the league around you. In 2022 and 2024, Judge wasn't just the face of baseball. He was its gravitational center. Opposing managers built strategies around avoiding him. Pitchers attacked the strike zone differently when he loomed on deck. Fans traveled city to city just to witness his at-bats. His WAR was more than a number. It was a reflection of lived reality. And there's another layer. Judge's WAR highlights how the conversation around value in baseball has changed. In the old days, greatness was measured by home runs, RBIs, batting average. Those stats are still important, but they don't capture the whole picture. WAR emerged as a tool to balance the equation, to compare hitters to fielders, sluggers, to speedsters, and to account for context. For some fans, WAR feels abstract, but when you look at Judge's 10.8, it stops being abstract. It becomes undeniable proof that this man is not just great in one category. He is great in every possible way. What fascinates me is how Judge's WAR seasons stack up historically. Only a handful of players in history have ever posted WAR totals above 10: Babe Ruth, Barry Bonds, Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle. These are not just Hall of Famers, they are the pantheon, the legends whose names anchor the very mythology of baseball. Judge, by hitting 10.8 twice, has walked into that pantheon. Whether he keeps climbing or not, he has already placed himself in conversations that link him to the immortals. But there's also a cultural truth to Judge's WAR records. They remind us that baseball greatness is both seen and unseen. Fans see the home runs, the towering shots that land in the second deck. Analysts see the WAR, the defensive runs saved, the base running decisions, the incremental value that adds up to wins. Judge is the rare player who dominates both conversations. He thrills the casual fan and satisfies the stat head. His value isn't siloed, it's universal. And in 2025, with Judge once again leading the league in batting average, ops, and home runs, we are seeing the possibility of him chasing a third 10 WAR season. That would not just solidify his place among the best active players, it would place him among the greatest players to ever step on a field, period. His WAR record isn't just an active milestone. It's a window into a career that could be remembered as one of the greatest in baseball history. If Aaron Judge's 10.8 WAR seasons remind us of dominance condensed into singular bursts, Starling Marte's career reminds us of greatness stretched across quiet, steady consistency. At first glance, 357 career stolen bases may not sound earth-shattering, compared to Rickey Henderson's unreachable 1,406 or even Jose Reyes' 517, but context is everything. Marte's stolen base total represents something more than just a number. It represents survival of a skill in an era that almost forgot it existed. For nearly 2 decades, baseball turned away from stolen bases. Analytics deemed them inefficient. Outs were too costly to risk for 90 extra feet. Home runs became the efficient way to score. And as pitchers grew faster and defenses sharper, steals plummeted across the league. And yet, Mark kept running. Season after season, he stole 20 or more bases 11 times in total. He did it efficiently, with a career success rate of nearly 79%, ensuring that when he ran, it mattered. He wasn't reckless. He was strategic. And his persistence kept alive a skill set that many thought was fading into extinction. Marte's record is even more impressive when you consider his role. He was never the face of baseball, never the superstar plastered across national ads. He was the kind of player managers dream of. Dependable, disruptive, a spark that kept pressure on opponents. With a career batting average of .285 and an OPS plus of 114, he wasn't just stealing bases for the sake of it. He was reaching base, creating opportunities, and keeping lineups alive, adding his to all-star selections and to Gold Glove awards. And you see a player whose value came not in one overwhelming category, but in balance across the board. Here's where the commentary sharpens. Marte's 357 stolen bases force us to reevaluate how we define greatness. We tend to focus on the extraordinary, the 60 homer seasons, the 300 strikeout campaigns, the video game stat lines, but baseball history is just as much about the players who showed up every day, year after year, delivering quietly until their numbers turned into milestones. Marte is one of those players. His stolen bases aren't a record of flash. They're a record of persistence, and that persistence matters because speed ages poorly. Power can linger, command can endure, but legs slow down, reflexes dull. What Marte achieved required not only athletic talent, but adaptability. As the years piled up, he adjusted his jumps, read pitchers more carefully, relied on instincts as much as pure sprint speed. He didn't just run blindly, he ran smart. That is why, even into his 30s, he continued to swipe bases with efficiency. His record isn't just about youth. It's about evolution. Culturally, Mart represents a bridge between baseball's past and present. Fans of an older generation grew up idolizing speedsters, Lou Brock, Tim Raines, Rickey Henderson. They watched games where stolen bases could dictate outcomes. Younger fans, however, grew up in an era where steals became an afterthought, overshadowed by home runs and strikeouts. Mart quietly carried that older tradition into the new age, reminding us that there's still room in the modern game for chaos on the basepaths. His 357 steals aren't just numbers on a page. They are a thread connecting generations of baseball philosophy. And here's the deeper truth. Marte's career proves that greatness doesn't always have to be historic. To be meaningful, he won't hold the all-time stolen base record. He won't finish in the Hall of Fame debates alongside Judge, Trout, or Kershaw. But his record as the active leader in career steals shows us something profound, that baseball is made up not only of its icons, but of its craftsmen. Mart crafted a career on consistency, on doing the small things well, on being the player who forced opponents to stay awake every time he reached first base. That matters. That has always mattered. So when we say Starling Marte leads all active players with 357 stolen bases, we're not just recognizing a statistic. We're honoring a philosophy of play that refused to die, even in an era that undervalued it. We're recognizing durability, persistence, and the kind of greatness that doesn't always scream, but whispers, adding up year by year until it becomes undeniable. Baseball is a sport of memory. It is built on ghosts, on numbers that live longer than the men who produced them, on stories rattled across generations. Babe Ruth's 714 home runs, Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak, Nolan Ryan's 7 no-hitters. These are not just statistics. They are myths, cultural artifacts, pieces of the game's DNA. And yet, what we sometimes forget is that the history of baseball is not finished. It is not locked in the past. It is being written every night, in real time, by the players we still watch, the men still running onto the field, still carving their names into the ledger of the game. That is what makes these active records so extraordinary. They are not old photographs. They are living achievements. They belong not to memory, but to the present. Mike Trout's career war, built through brilliance and burdened by fragility, shows us what it means to be both godlike and human at the same time. Aaron Judge's home runs and war seasons prove that one man can dominate both the spectacle and the spreadsheet, turning baseball into both myth and math. Giancarlo Stanton's 429 career homers remind us that greatness can be fractured by injuries and yet still thunder through silence. José Altuve's 125 hits in a season force us to reconsider the beauty of contact. In an era obsessed with power, Ronald Acuña Jr.'s 40 to 70 season shows us that chaos still has a place in the modern game. That speed can bend baseball's probabilities. Jarrett Cole's 326 strikeouts crystallized the evolution of pitching into a high-velocity arms race. Shohei Ohtani's 50 to 50 season exists not as a stat line, but as a rupture in imagination, a legend made flesh. Jacob deGrom's 1.70 era in 2018 reminds us that brilliance can shine even in futility, that sometimes the greatest don't get crowned with wins. Justin Verlander's strikeouts and wins remind us that greatness can last, that reinvention can defy time. Luis Ariza's batting average is a love letter to precision, to an art form nearly lost. Clayton Kershaw's era is a monument to endurance, a career that withstood every narrative, every change, and still ended with greatness intact. Freddie Freeman's hits remind us that consistency itself is heroic, that greatness is not always loud, but accumulative. And Starling Marte's stolen bases remind us that survival, persistence, and craftsmanship have a place alongside fireworks together. These records are not just a list. They are a portrait. They reveal baseball not as a monolith, but as a mosaic, where greatness takes many shapes. Some dominate in bursts of historic brilliance. Some thrive in silence, stacking small achievements until they become undeniable. Some remind us of the fragility of the body, others of the endurance of the spirit. But all of them matter, because all of them tell us that history is not something we look back on. It is something we live inside. Here is the deeper truth. These players are not just competing against opponents. They are competing against time. Every home run Judge hits, every strikeout Verlander records, every single Arise lines into right is one more defiance of the inevitable decline that awaits. That is why we cherish these records now. Not because they will last forever, they won't, but because they remind us of the beauty of the moment. Baseball teaches us, more than any sport, that nothing lasts. Seasons end, careers fade, numbers freeze in history while the men behind them move on. That transience is not a tragedy. It is the reason we watch dots. So when we talk about Trout, Judge, Ohtani, Freeman, Kershaw, and the rest, we are not just reciting statistics. We are bearing witness to greatness as it happens. One day, these players will be gone. Their numbers will be inked into record books. Their highlights will be grainy replays, and new players will come, chasing them, breaking them, adding their names to the chain. But for now, in this moment, they are here. They are active. They are alive. And that is worth celebrating, because baseball, at its heart, is not about the past or the future. It is about the present, the crack of the bat tonight, the roar of the crowd tonight, the number added to the tally tonight. These active records remind us that history is not a museum exhibit. It is a living, breathing thing, and we, as fans, get to stand inside of it.